Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking work planners. I have been on a bit of a journey these past couple of years with finding the perfect work planner for me, and I thought it would make a fun video just to kind of show you what I've tried over the past couple of years, what worked, what didn't work, and why I'm currently in what I'm in. So 2 years ago I changed companies and started a new job, and since then I've moved into a different role that's had kind of slightly different needs in terms of my day-to-day workload. And so I have flicked around into a couple of different planning setups, and these are all the ones effectively that I've used, and I thought it'd be fun to kind of go through each one that I've used and in order basically, and how I've used them and why I then eventually moved on. The first one, pure and simple, bullet journal basically. Hobonichi came out with their own plain notebooks, well, grid notebooks with Tomoe River paper a few years ago, and so for the job that I was moving into a couple of years ago, this felt kind of ideal. I knew that I wouldn't need like a huge amount of structure in my planning, and that I wouldn't need, you know, lots and lots of pages. I wouldn't need kind of a firm weekly setup, and so this was the perfect way just to kind of capture everything in one book. I've got plenty of pages that I can use. I added a Midori cover, so I've got a pen loop and pages, or you know, pockets for bits and pieces that I might need to keep, and it worked out really well. I was basically using a week per page, well, a week per 2-page spread, and I kept it very, very simple. One thing I will say is for all of these planners, I don't use them for tracking my day in terms of meetings and appointments. Everything moves around too much. I use Outlook/Google depending on the business, always have, and that keeps all of my appointments and meetings there. The way things move around, I'd be writing out and rewriting out stuff more often than not, and so it wasted my time. This is purely for tasks, projects, planning, things like that. So that's why this actually worked out really well. Left hand side, pure and simple, my to-do list, done. I would use highlighters for certain things, so cover it in pink if it is urgent and desperately needs to be done ASAP. I would generally use blue if that was a task but I needed someone for it, so if it was a check-in with someone on something, that would get coloured that way. Other than that, sometimes I'd use blue for just making quick notes. I was using my Hobonichi pen at the time, so I could then do kind of blue here or in for any notes or anything like that. Obviously using red for the title, but I kept it very, very simple, very low key. And yeah, just a to-do list here. The right hand side, so that job, I was waiting on stuff for a lot of people. There was kind of some project management elements to it, so the right hand side was always for things that I had asked people for or was waiting on further info from. That would just go there and give me a good tracker for how much stuff I needed to then go and chase. So if it was on there for a few days, I go, right, okay, I've not heard back, I need to go and chase. I would then just basically migrate anything over into the next week at the start of next week, so you can see some of the signifiers there where I have migrated things over, and that worked out really well. I then always left this page blank, because that was always good for any meeting notes or any other random notes that came up, and it just meant I effectively had a week at a glance. Worked really well for that job, was absolutely fine. I then had spare pages in the back for any kind of bigger project planning, and that's what the page flags were for, so I knew that I just had a few select pages that I might need to reference back to at any point. They were just tabbed off there, but generally this just stayed out and open on my desk like this, all good. I have had to cover up some bits, that's why there's the random moving sticky notes on here, but just because there's, even though this is a couple of years old now, there's just a few bits that needed covering up. So apologies, you will see a bit of that in this video. But yeah, very, very simple setup. I do love a post-it note, so there were random ones kind of dotted around for bits of information, but this served me well. And when I moved into my current role just over a year ago, I did start in this, but I realised pretty quickly that I needed to go back to proper structure and a proper planner. And that's where I went back into my Hobonichi weeks. So this isn't the actual Hobonichi weeks that I was using. I think it might be in my desk drawer at work, even though I looked everywhere for it before I left on Friday. But This is what I was using about 6 years ago in a slightly different job, and I basically didn't use it any different. The setup is completely the same, and it is very, very simple and very, very messy, but it is basically, I mean, it wasn't quite as messy as this when I was using it earlier in the year. This is very messy from many years ago, but very, very simple, kind of very, very similar setup to here. The difference is that I was using this with a bit more direction as to, you know, when things needed to be done. So having it split out like this meant that I could use this for day specific tasks, because in my current role I'll have certain things that need to be done on a certain day. I'll then have loads of other things that just kind of come in throughout the week, and so this allows me to kind of split that up really nicely. So day specific tasks here, and then any other tasks, any other notes, any other meeting bits all go in here. I then, because it's a week's, obviously have loads of blank pages at the back, so I did have expanded meeting notes in here, so maybe like a page per supplier, for example, and I just keep track of the notes there, just because this is quite limited in space. And this allowed me to have a bit more direction each day, so I knew exactly what had to be done without fail on each day, and then what was just filling in the gaps. Very similar principles in terms of I used kind of bullet journal signifiers. I was using colour coding to demonstrate, so generally blue is notes, black is a task, and red is urgent task, and then migrating stuff over as and when. And from a structure perspective, worked absolutely fine. From a space perspective, not fine. It was nowhere near enough space. My current job is very, very busy, and even with the additional notes pages, which were fine, but then flicking back and forth, finding the page, I needed more room on my weekly layout. And that's when I happened upon a planner in the journal shop that was on a deep discount that I'd been wanting to try, and so I decided to pick it up on a whim and move into that instead. One thing you'll notice with all of these planners is they all have to have some sort of cover and some sort of pen loop, because one thing that I do like to have is just everything all together, so that if I'm going to a meeting or going on a work trip, I don't need to worry about carrying loads of stuff. I've got everything I need here. I've got my planner, I've got my pen, done. And this is no different. So this is a Jibun, and this was a daily version. So this is actually 6 months in one book, so you get 2 books together and one cover, because the idea is you just move it over when the first 6 months is up. And the cover is pretty cool, has a few pockets for important information and the all-important pen loop. I was using a uni Jetstream at the time, so very similar concept. Well, it is basically the Hobonichi pen, but this has a pencil there and an eraser on the end, so just a little bit added functionality. And this, like I say, is a daily setup. So I've just kind of, because obviously this is getting into a more recent book and there's a lot more that I'd have to cover up, so I thought it would just be easier to kind of sketch out how I set up these pages. So on the basis that the weeks didn't have enough space for me, I completely course corrected and went into a daily planner with a page per day, hence the daily planner. And how I had it set up, very similar really to how I had the week set up. It just was able to capture a lot more in day. I wasn't needing any notes pages because it had more than enough space. So left hand side, I just use for tasks, exactly the same way that I have done in my weeks and my bullet journal signifiers, red for urgent, blue for notes or other bits and pieces, and a black just kind of point for tasks. Done. Right hand side I would use for meetings, so this is where I would just collect things that I needed to talk to someone in the meeting that was upcoming, and then I'll also use it for a bit of notes during the meeting. My meetings don't tend to be kind of huge, big, like I'll have like big like QBRs and things like that, but day to day I'll have kind of smaller meetings, so this will be generally more than enough space. And that's all down there. And then notes and waiting on would kind of be a bit interspersed. Sometimes I'd carve out this area for waiting on, and it worked fine, but the problem was, so the waiting on bit was a really easy one. So I might contact somebody on Monday and then add it in, and then I'd then kind of get to Friday and have to kind of either flick back to Monday to see if there's anything still waiting on and then kind of keep that updated throughout the week, or every time I flicked a page, I'd have to migrate. So in this week, for example, so anything that I wrote on Monday, I'd then have to migrate onto this layout, whether it be waiting on or task. And then when it got to Friday or Thursday, Friday, I'd then have to do more migration. And it just, although I was getting more space, it then felt my ease of use was really, really limited, because I was having to do lots of migrating or lots of flicking back and forth. And while I don't mind having separate pages for kind of project planning and notes, when it comes to my weekly layout, I do want to see everything in one place. So having to achieve that by doing lots of rewriting wasn't really efficient for me. And so as much as I liked this planner and liked the setup of it, it wasn't right for me. And actually I wasn't really filling up the pages. So I then kind of realized that actually, although I needed more space, I didn't need a whole big page per day. So then I was like, okay, back to the drawing board. What can I use? And then I remembered a planner setup that I had used a few years ago, where I tried a few Naughty planners for the first time and realized that they had the perfect layout. So recently I moved into a Naughty and went back to my Hobonichi pen and bought this. So this one, which I am just only going to be able to show the kind of sketched out layout because this is very current, so lots of stuff I can't share, but this layout is the perfect hybrid layout. It gives me Monday, I mean obviously I don't work weekends, but it gives me Monday to Friday, and it gives me enough space to write out the date specific tasks that absolutely need to be done on that day, and then it leaves me all of this spare space to write other stuff. And how I generally split it out is I write 4 titles on top. So this week, all of my tasks here. I might have a big task with lots of kind of little ones or just general to-dos. I'll then have a column for notes, so just general kind of bits and pieces that I might need to know or things to reference back later, or if I'm doing like a quick calculation, I'll keep it there. I then have my waiting on list, and that's very similar to what I've been using in all my other planners, and then just the meeting bits, I guess. I've been in this now for I think probably 2 months or so, and it's been working brilliantly. I have finessed how I use it in terms of how I track. So when I have this meeting, if there's something where I've gone through it but I need them to come back on it, I'll highlight it in a colour, or if it's something that's resolved as part of the meeting, I'll just tick it. I'm kind of working on ways to really kind of make that super efficient. I colour code as I have done in the other one, so notes are generally sometimes black, sometimes blue. I need to probably get a bit better with that, but waiting on is generally blue, and then my tasks are here. I will colour code, so I'll generally highlight in pink anything that is urgent, that isn't necessarily day specific, but I'll capture it on here, but then highlight in pink so I know that it needs to be done ASAP. I try and keep like actual proper day specific tasks in here, just so I can kind of, it works for me. Some people would just rather put anything urgent in here, but I do like to have the separation. I don't know, it makes sense in my head. But this kind of whole setup has been working beautifully. The only thing I found is that some weeks have been particularly busy, that actually I need kind of 2 columns for this week. So what I have been doing is merging these two and just basically almost creating a bit of a running log, bullet journal style, and it's intermixed with tasks and notes using the signifier so I can tell the difference, which is then sometimes where writing notes in blue comes in handy, because then I can differentiate between tasks and notes. And yeah, it's perfect size. So this is a B6. I probably forgot to mention that. And I think that this is the perfect size for me, actually. I don't think I need A5. I think there is an A5 version of it. I could be wrong. But I was conscious to try this size first rather than going all the way in, because I don't like to carry massive books around. I do like to be quite efficient with it, particularly if I have to travel for work, which I do kind of go out to meetings fairly regularly, so I don't want to be carrying much more than I need. And so far this has been perfect. I've been using my Hobonichi pen. The only thing I was really concerned about getting this planner was the size. I went into a B6 rather than the full A5 because I wanted to see if this was enough space, because I was pretty convinced that this would be enough. And so far, yeah, I haven't spilled over. There are notes pages in the back, which I've got another clip to get to my next empty page. And this has been good just for writing kind of project notes or any kind of bigger scribbles, things like that. You get a good amount of notes pages as well. So that's been really good. The cover that it comes with has obviously got space for a few bits of pages, but not loads, otherwise it will chunk up the planner, so I do just kind of keep post-it notes in there. But so far so good. I think this is a happy medium. It gives me the structure of a weekly, but just gives me bucket loads of room to kind of carve out however I want. And I like this layout. I like that I can just create nice neat columns. I prefer this than if it was almost like a Hobonichi week setup where it's like left for the week and then write. I feel like this setup, particularly because a lot of what I write isn't very long, so actually, you know, having that in columns, perfect, because I generally won't write a task longer than that anyway. And yeah, this has been pretty perfect for me. I'm thinking that this will probably be the book for 2026 as well. It's compact, I can take it to meetings, I can take it when I'm traveling. The paper's really nice quality, although I am using Hobonichi pen, so it doesn't really matter too much. I'm not using fountain pens, and really love it. And it, you know, Nolty is a great brand. Between this and my Filofax inserts, well, my Me Plus inserts, I'm big on Nolty this year, it seems. So I highly recommend. I know a few people, when I kind of showed a glimpse of this planner in an earlier video, wanted to know what it was, and so I did want to give it a little bit of airtime because I do enjoy using it. The only bits that I'm not using are all these extra bits. I probably should use the monthlies a bit better because I could probably use it to kind of track events and things like that, which are then good to then look back on, particularly in my job in retail. Like knowing when we had a heat wave next year will be really handy, but we've got programs that tell us all that stuff. So these aren't used, they could be used, but to be honest, this is just perfect for me right now. And the notes pages in the back, brilliant, love it. And that's been my work planner journey for the past couple of years. Really happy with this, really happy with how it's working. I'm not a huge fan of this kind of PU leather cover. It gets quite dirty quite easily because it's so pale, but it's just my work planner, so I'm not too worried. I'm not too bothered about it looking super cute or super pretty. It's functional, it does the job. So hopefully that was useful. If you have a separate work planner, let me know what you use and why. Always keen to hear what other people use for their work planning. Do you work in an office like I do, where basically no one else has a paper planner and everyone is digital, and you get lots of comments on your handwriting? Because I definitely do. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Bye.